Hello and welcome to Soups and Sabers. Happy Superman Sunday. My name is Jordan. With me today, as always, in the lead up to James Gunn's Superman, Chris. How are you, Chris?
I am looking up for this film. Let's go. I feel like an all-star today.
Yeah, we are going to be talking All Star Superman, of course, the famous comic, but also the most cited example of what inspired James Gunn per his interviews. Anytime he's talking about the picture that was continually used by the trades and by him when he made his announcement was the cover of issue 1, which is also like the trade paperbacks cover, of course, with Superman sitting in the clouds. So that has kind of become the uh, what I would say most people know of. I had not read this before doing the podcast. Like I read it. I would say I read it over the course of a month or so, maybe something like that. I'd read a couple issues and then I'd kind of leave it for a bit, and then read a couple more issues and leave it for a bit. So to familiarize myself with it again, I actually watched the movie, which for shame, HBO Max, for shame that this is
Yeah,
not one
I
of your
was
program.
disappointed.
It's not streaming anywhere.
Hmm.
I have been using my library a lot for certain stuff, and I just happened to check. I typed in All Star Superman, and they actually had like the 80th anniversary collection that has like Superman, Batman, Public Enemies,
Uh-huh.
um, Superman versus the Elite. It had like 8 movies or something, and I just put it on reserve and kind of forgot about it. And then a couple days later, it was like, it's here. And I was like, perfect. I'll go pick it up. And I watched it over the weekend. And um, I am, I thought it was a pretty good adaptation. We'll talk about it later on. But um, it's a very hard comic to adapt. So
Hmm.
I would say, this one had a lot of hype about it. Right. So if we just kind of go into my experience with the book, right? This one had a lot of hype to it. I had read For All Seasons, which also had a lot of hype to it. Really loved For All Seasons. Um, All Star, it took me a little bit more to kind of vibe with. Um, I don't know if it is because of like the Silver Age esque Superman stuff, or just not what I was expecting originally. I think is a big part of it. So when I kind of calibrate after I read it and kind of revisit it and stuff, I like it more after revisiting it than probably my initial read through. Which I would say is probably a hot take because, like I said, this is usually up there for a lot of people's favorite Superman story in all media. So I kind of felt almost like a bad fan for not vibing with it originally.
Not a real
But
fan. Hashtag not a real
yeah,
fan.
not a real fan.
No, I get it though.
Yeah, so I guess take me through your first read. Like when did you find this book? When did you read it? What was your thoughts on your first read? And then, kind of how has that changed at all if it has when you revisited it?
All right, so back in like the early days of like me in trade paperbacks, which is incredibly late in my life, embarrassingly. Um, I was kind of just the guy who went to Barnes and Noble and was like, "Ooh, here's a cool trade paperback," and that's kind of how I got them. Then I got on Amazon a little bit. Um, Comic book stores found me at some point, but this was the second trade paperback that I read for Superman. I had read a bunch of Batman. I thought, well, I should probably read Superman, and I was just listening to a podcast that it made me think I should listen to should read a Superman comic, and they were talking about Superman Smashes the Klan. So I read that and I said, "Well, I really enjoyed that. Maybe I do like Superman more than I thought. Maybe I should get into Superman a little bit more." So I picked up All Star Superman right after that, and it was kind of my nightly comic. I'd read an issue or two and go to bed, and I think I I think there was a time I would tell you that All Star Superman was my favorite Superman trade. I think now I would say that For All Seasons is my favorite. But that's no shame to All Star Superman. I think the reason I got so excited about All Star Superman, it had all the sci-fi stuff in it. You know, you had this larger than life story. You had Lex Luthor with a sinister plot with the whole, you know, solar radiation overcharging him and giving him a time limit, and he not knowing how to tell Lois. And there was a lot of science fiction stuff, a lot of cool superhero feats in here. And I found Lex Luthor very interesting in here. And I was like, cool, this is like, I felt like I was being sucked into a world. And I also liked it because I didn't have a ton of expectations of Superman comics coming into this because I hadn't read that many. I mean, I was a Batman guy. I was going through Batman trades. I probably read 20 at this point. I probably read 20 Batman trades to one Superman trade. So like it was, and that's how I got into comics. And uh, I was starting more of the Flash with this too. I mean, I probably was 10 or 12 issues into the Flash as well. So, or trades into the Flash. So, you know, this is a larger than life story that caught me very early in my fandom of Superman. And for that reason, it resonates a lot with me. I've read it twice, and then like, I've been pretty busy. So, what I did is I kind of read the first 6 issues, like, and it's like, I'm not going to finish this in time. So, I just kind of skimmed through, and I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
remember that. Oh, I remember that. Um, so I and I had seen the movie not that long ago. It's funny. I must have been the last person to see it on Max's. I swear it wasn't that long ago when I saw it. But I do like the adaptation they made. I agree with you. It's a very hard thing to adapt, not only because it's 12 issues, because it kind of goes all over the place.
Yeah. Kind of like I said, a tough a tough story to adapt, I would say. I think the animated movie does a pretty good job. It does end up cutting a few of the issues, right? Because you have to narrow down the story, and it ends up narrowing down the story more to this Lex Superman, the heart of it, right? That's the heart of the
Right.
story. Is Lex has kind of tricked Superman into, I guess, getting so close to the sun that it has um, gave him way more power, but it is killing him, which I think is a unique thing to this story. I don't really remember any other time that Superman, like, usually he goes there and gets healed. It's usually not like a detriment
Right.
fully to this point, and it kind of works both ways. Like he ends up getting like smarter, faster, stronger, but it's also killing him at the same time.
And I love the sense of urgency that gave Superman, because I think sometimes Superman is just like, oh, I can do anything, and the fact that I can do anything and I only have this much time to do it was a really cool like plot to the story. And I think it helped me that this was an early Superman read for me, because I didn't really know much about him being a solar battery, and I didn't really know that every time in any other Superman story that he's in trouble, just throw him into the sun. I hadn't got to that point yet as a fan, so I was like, okay, yeah, sure, it makes sense to me.
Right, right. So let's see. Let's see where we want to kind of start with. So, like I said, we have the main crux of the story, right? And of course this is written by Grant Morrison and you know drawn by Frank Quietly.
I love the artwork in this. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And you know when when the animated movie obviously doesn't have the style of it,
Right.
but when it shows like flashbacks to certain things, it is like a still image almost
Mhm.
of Frank Quietly's arc. So I did like that, how they kind of eased
Blended
that
it.
into it. Like the end thing where Lois is talking about Superman's going to be able to like fix the star and working on it. It's his artwork from the 12th issue or whatever. So, and then in like the very beginning of the movie when it's showing stuff from I think like Krypton and stuff, it's very that style of art. But yeah, we have Superman rescuing Leo Quintum and his team while Lex Luthor has sabotaged it. And like I said, it ends up getting massive amounts of solar radiation into Superman's cells, which is increasing his power, but also killing him. Quintum says he has 1 year left to live. And Lex Luthor is arrested not long after and actually has like a pretty quick death sentence given to him.
Yeah, it's unrealistic. Like death row is like,
he would still be awaiting trial after the year if it was real life. But so this causes Superman, like you said, to kind of think, hey, my time's up. And he reveals his secret identity to Lois Lane. I think this is one thing that did kind of rub me the wrong way on the first. That
he's this far into it and it's still in that dynamic.
No, it was more of how she reacts to it.
Oh yeah, she doesn't every reaction.
She doesn't
had multiple reactions.
She doesn't really think that it is true. It's almost like she thinks that. So here's one thing I have a question about.
All right.
And I don't think we even have an answer to this. It's just like, usually people don't believe Clark and Superman can be the same because of how different they are, right? Like Clark, very bumbling idiot, and they do that very well in this. Clark he plays it up as Clark very well. But there's a few instances in this where it almost seems like they know they look alike. And it's like she still can't believe it. So, she thinks Clark's kind of pranking him at this point. And then even when Superman kind of takes her to the fortress, she still seems kind of like not sure about it. Mm-hmm. Then there's the time where he is Superman posing as Clark. I mean, that's what he always is to us. But like Jimmy helps him pose as Clark, and then Lex interrupts the thing, and he uses the gravity gun on him and stuff. Lex thinks he's Clark. Jimmy, all these people think he's Clark except for Jimmy, until he rips off the thing and he's Superman. I'm like, so do they think he actually does look a lot like Clark? It was kind of the weird thing I had as a hang up in it. But it's whatever. It's a comic book. But
I like that Superman was giving Lois a range of emotions, because at first she's in the shock and, like you said, she's thinking she's being pranked, and then she's like in the fortress and she sees this room she's not allowed to go into, and she's starting to think she's this weird science experiment, and that this might not even be Superman, or this could be some sort of weird thing going on. And so she's like, oh, Superman, I gotta defend myself. She gets the gun and everything, and and then she talks herself down, and Superman gives her present, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But it's just, I love that Lois had a range of emotions here. I was a little surprised it took her so long, but I like that she was really going at it like a reporter, like trying to poke holes in Superman being Clark. Like she was trying to get the answer for herself, not be given the answer, which I thought was true to Lois, at least.
Yeah, kind of weird though that like this far into it, she doesn't fully trust Superman.
That is weird. Although there was one little detail that I did like. She was like, I always write the headlines before Superman does something.
Yes, yeah, like she does trust him there, right? But it's like,
yeah,
she does. He was acting kind of strange, but like she like almost goes, like you said, like there's a comic cover of her up against the wall with the gun as she takes out one of his
all of a sudden it's Die Hard of the Fortress.
Yeah. But yeah, so he takes her to a birthday dinner in the Fortress of Solitude, and he's restoring the Titanic during his downtime. She accidentally attacks him with the kryptonite laser, which he,
He's immune to now.
he's immune to now because of the solar
Right.
radiation. So I thought that was an interesting little
I thought it was funny that
piece
it
of
tickled.
information.
Like
Yeah.
he's like, oh, it tickles. Um, I was like, because I think that's interesting because I think Tyler Hoechlin's Superman said that shooting like bullets felt like tickles or something like that.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was a Superman and Lois or Supergirl, but I think it was that Superman and Lois when he starts to actually feel the bullets that one episode, and he's like, what the heck?
Oh yes, yeah, maybe.
Um, but that's a different show. But like I like that detail. Like I love the details in Grant Morrison's writing. I also hate them because it's like you can miss things so easily with Grant Morrison. So like you actually have to pay attention. You can't just like, oh wow, cool, follow the story along, looking at the art.
Hmm.
Morrison likes to put a lot in there.
So he gives her this like liquid formula that
Yeah,
has part of his DNA that grants her his superpowers for 24 hours.
and she's excited about it.
Yeah, without the restriction of kryptonite and a red sun. Like she wouldn't have those restrictions. Um, and she uses, like the Superwoman suit that he made with her. They stop a monster attack in Metropolis involving Samson and Atlas, which
And they hit on her the whole time, and Superman can't stand it.
pretty interesting that they kind of like act like Samson and Atlas are a thing in like DC, but like it seems like they're not in DC Comics a lot. So I thought that was kind of weird that they seem to have like you know, it almost seemed like we should have known who they were, and then I'm like, I don't
Like
actually
it
know who they
was,
are.
yeah. Imagine me just getting into the comics. I'm just like,
Yeah,
okay, I know DC's a wide world. I think that's like the beauty, the subtle beauty of just getting into comics. Like when you first start some of these things, you just go with it.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, Atlas was created by Jack Kirby in '75. He only appeared with Kirby though. Um, uh, oh no, and then he appeared in a Superman issue 677 back in the day, but I mean, like he's not in there a lot. So I thought it was a very interesting pool for Morrison to go with Atlas and Samson. Thought that was really interesting.
yeah, I
But
I love
yeah.
that sequence though because it was like Clark did not want this to be how the day went, and Superman's like, Lois is like, I'm so I would be so disappointed if there wasn't this monster to take down. This is
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Yeah, because it's her birthday, and he's thinking like, "Oh, I'm doing something nice for her birthday." She's like, "This is exactly what I want." Like,
Yeah,
you,
he wants to fly by the Statue of Liberty and
yeah.
go to Paris, and she's like, let's do something ridiculous, Superman style, and that's funny.
But
Probably would do the same thing if I had his powers for a day.
Lois and Clark, go back to the moon. They end up kissing before her powers return to go away, and then Luthor, like I said, is sentenced to death. Clark has to go undercover. Superman, I guess, go undercover cover as Clark to meet with Luthor for an interview, and we get this whole thing with like Parasite. I don't think it is Parasite, but it is a type of version of a parasite, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a parasite. Yeah,
Um, and he has to run away, and this is one thing that I really did like. I think I like the Lex Superman Clark dynamics in this comic the most out of what's here.
there's a lot of meat on those bones.
There is, and I think that's what makes me excited for the Superman movie too. Is knowing that Nicholas Holt said like he read All Star, and that's kind of what they were striving for Lex. I think this is a pretty good Lex in the comics. So I, this is something that really worked for me in the comic. And then this whole thing that Clark is, I guess, who he had asked to come in to get the interview with or whatever, or, Clark makes it so he goes interviews him. And we get this scene where like this parasite is leeching stuff from the people in the prison, and Clark thinks to himself, like, I have to run away so he doesn't get my powers, and it makes everything even worse. And Lex is just thinking like he looks like a coward, right? And then you have like when Lex is running and not looking, Clark using his heat vision to set the sprinklers on, or using his cold breath to keep the people in place that are trying to come after them. And I think this was a really great part of the comic, because it's, Lex hates Superman so much, and he does in this, right? He set it up so he could die, but he still doesn't think much of Clark, and he actually seems to like Clark a bit. Like he wants to, give him this
He likes
story.
Clark because he sees him as a snow buddy. He's not
Yes,
threatening to him, and he
non-threatening.
amuses him. I think
Yes,
Clark amuses him. I don't think he respects him. It's like he almost treats him like Otis.
yeah,
a little bit. Like
especially when he
this
like
Otis
trips
fool.
like on the cord or something that they have
Yeah,
in the yeah in the
yeah. And
prison.
what I love about this Lex though is that we talk about Rosamond being like the ultimate Lex for like live action. I think this might be the best you see Lex in a comic. Like he's just so smug and cocky, and he's just like, I win no matter what. And he thinks the worst of everybody around him. So of course he thinks Clark is this bumbling idiot that he doesn't need to worry about. I love the dynamic there. And I think this, if you ask somebody who Lex Luthor is, and that you want a good answer for them, like you want a good answer for who Lex Luthor is, give them All Star Superman. I think that's a really good synopsis of what Lex Luthor is in a nutshell.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah. So he kind of takes Clark down to like escape from this. He can escape at any time, but he doesn't want to. He wants to be in that spot where he's going to be uh put to death pretty much. And then he has already taken the serum, and it will, not work on him, and then he will, be good to go, I guess. Whatever. But there is one of my favorite issues does not get adapted in the movie. Um, let me see if I have like a little bit of a. No, they don't really have a good description of it on here. But okay, but it's the issue where there is somebody coming to Smallville and helps, like Jonathan Kent, right? And it turns out to be, at the end, he takes off his bandages that are covering his face or whatever, and it is Superman, right? And it's like he had this chance to like spend like one more day with his father type thing, right? What issue is that? That is like the I have to pull it up on the app. Let's see. Okay, I think it's issue 6. It's like the cover of issue 6 has him like standing over his dad's grave. But we get like this little like flashback of like Superman being like, distracted by these future Supermen. And there's like a mysterious stranger that comes to and he's wearing Superman type stuff, has bandages all over his face and his hands. And he gets to have this like last conversation with his dad. Um, just a really cool thought that he got to do that with his father. And it's like probably the one that is, I can see why they cut it, because it is one that hinges a lot on the past, right? Like you have
Mm-hmm.
to you have to go backwards in time to show that this thing happened to Superman years ago when his father, like his last day that his father was alive. And then you reveal that it's Superman from our time has went back in time to do this and kind of close the
It's
loop,
a
but
little
also
convoluted.
yeah, yeah. And when you're doing a 75-minute movie, which is what the animated movie is, it's like the easy cut. But I think for me it was the most like heartfelt
I
of
can see
the
that.
issues. And it's the one that kind of had the most lasting impact on me from this.
The art of
From
this
this.
issue is also insane.
Yeah, it's really good
Like,
art too.
yeah, it's just like because every scene is so dramatic. But I love the way that Superman is drawn in this too, because he's not. It's a little like Tim Sale, is he's just big. He's not super muscularly defined. I like that idea. Like because I always hate the idea of Superman being a gym rat. Like Henry Cavill's cool, but like I like just to have like a big Superman and the suit to like really just pop with the blue, and not because he's like this massive dude. And I just like the way he's drawn. But yeah, this is a beautiful issue. I'm flipping through it. I'm like, damn. Some of my favorite Superman art. I think that's one of the reasons this will always be there, especially why the promotional image that they use for the movie is getting so much play.
Yeah, yeah. I think the art, you know, um, it, it is very good art, and you also have like this moment, like I said, where one of the best parts of it, I think, is this very last page of the sixth issue when he's kind of like hunched down at his dad's tombstone
Hmm.
because you don't see Superman a lot
You see
have
Clark.
his back arched like that and be slunken down
Hmm.
in this type of posture because he's usually the one that stands up tall. So it's like this very humanizing moment where you see kind of, even though in this comic it feels like Superman is the actual person and Clark is the disguise, he did grow up Clark Kent with Jonathan and Martha, right? So
Yeah,
he still has that. And like this picture here where he is, and I'll put it up on the screen when we're editing it or whatever. But this screenshot that I'm going to be putting up here just kind of has like this very it's a good angle too. It's kind of above a bit looking down.
and you see like the trees above him.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if it shows on the. No, it's horrible on the computer.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's a great image, and I've always taken this All Star Superman as you said he's kind of Superman more as a real thing. I've always taken it as he grew up as Clark Kent, he became Superman, and because he's become Superman, he's more. That's like the adult version of himself. He is like his identity is Superman, but he grew up as Clark Kent, so it's not like a split identity or he goes back and forth. It's just this is the adult version, kind of like there was a 10 years ago there was a different version of me, you know what I mean?
Right, right, right.
So
Yeah. I'd like to think of like if we look at like Smallville for example, right? You have
mhm.
he grows up as Clark, but the Clark that people are going to know in Metropolis is not the Clark we grew up watching, right? Because that we saw grow up.
Yeah,
Because we've seen the nods to him needing the glasses and him being bumbling and whatever in Smallville's future when he becomes Superman. That's not the Clark he was, right? So this is
right.
obviously like he's still Clark, but like the fact that I think it's so much more clear here of like it's more similar to the movies in the sense of how
Uh-huh.
bumbling he is. It feels very Reeve-esque here, right? With the bumbling nature of him and like
It's
that
definitely
posture
more
change.
Reeves. Yeah, it's definitely more Reeves than Welling. I think one of the funniest things about Welling is how much he hated being the bumbling idiot. Whereas I feel like there's a Ralph to Welling scale where Brandon Ralph was like, "Oh, cool, I get to act like a bumbling idiot," and
Yeah.
Tom Welling was like, "Ah, do I have to do this? Do I have to wear the glasses?"
Yeah, and we have I think my least favorite issue is the next one that also got cut from the from the thing, but it's like very Bizarro heavy and him being on like the Bizarro world.
Yeah, again,
This is one
this
of the
is
ones that made me like stop reading for a bit.
yeah. Is this the one with the like he's tied to the rocket of the cover?
No, that's the one after it. But it's kind of
Okay,
those two. Those two
yeah.
issues are very like I'm not too big on
It's
them. Like
it's the dragging of the story to me. Like you're getting away from the core of the story. I think that was why that was an easy cut for them in the movie.
yeah, the one thing they did keep was like the other Kryptonians that came, like the next issue, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that was actually a good idea to keep those because it kind of shows the dichotomy between Superman and the other Kryptonians, and then when they are struggling, um, and he still helps them and puts them in the Phantom Zone until they can kind of figure out the way to fix themselves. Right? It's kind of like the idea, like he's going to work on it, put them in the Phantom Zone for now, so they can still live and be with each other. Like I think that is just again shows who he is, right? Like that is, helping people constantly. And I think that's one thing that again, like if I'm gonna put like my favorites of this All-Star Superman stuff, it's gonna be like the Lex Clark
Mm-hmm.
dichotomy, right? And then also the him helping people, because it seems like this is one thing James did take a lot of for his movie. Because if we look at the trailers that we've gotten, I mean, he's saving people left and right. The little girl, right? The person
Mm-hmm.
from underneath the kaiju's foot. I mean, he is like the little boy over in like Boravia or wherever
Right.
that's going to be. Like it seems to be a constant
That's what
theme
he
in,
wants to do.
in the
That's
movie.
what he
And
drives them. Yeah.
yeah, and it seems like that is very highlighted in All Star. I mean, it's highlighted in a lot of comics, but I think sometimes this is going to be a very different movie. I think from like general superhero movies,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
It's not about how big and strong he is. It's about how good he is. It's about what he wants to do. I think the reason we got in the trailer your choices, your actions,
yes, yeah, yeah.
what you do makes you who you are. I think the reason we got it in that delivery, I think the reason we got it as this big voiceover in that big moment of the trailer is because I think that's what drives Clark. I think Clark is, I'm going to do good, but I think for him, that's saving lives. I think he thinks everyone is precious and worth the
Mhm.
same amount. I think this is a Superman who can't stand Lex Luthor, but absolutely thinks he has as much value as any other human. And if that's what we get, I'm like, yeah, cool. This is what I'm talking about. I think Superman in this is so confident too. I love that's one of the things I think people love about All Star Superman. This Superman is just like I can do anything. I can have. It's not that he can do anything. He just knows he can do anything, and he's even confident as Clark. I mean, he's basically an actor when he's Clark.
Right,
Like
right.
he's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna play that annoying brother on Two and a Half Men when I'm Clark.
And I think that's like something I think I see in the trailer as well, in the sense of when he's flirting with Lois and he agrees to interview, he's not Superman, he's Clark at that point.
Yeah,
And it's not until he does the lean in and he says Miss Lane that he's Superman, right? Like, so it's like he's confident as Clark when he can be himself, right? But when he
right.
has to play it up for other people, he's going to be the bumbling idiot. But what I think what I mean by this is going to be like a very different movie is like usually you have the big villain that like Spider-Man faces Goblin, right? Spider-Man
Right.
faces Doc Ock, Batman faces Joker, Superman faces Zod. And it becomes like a punching fest or like some sort of beat 'em up type thing. I don't think we're gonna get him doing that to Lex. I think it's gonna be like him fighting all of Lex's like trials here, right? That he had like the Kaiju, Ultraman, the Engineer, right? Like those are who he's gonna be fighting. I don't think he's gonna be like punching Lex unless if Lex gets a power
So
suit at the end.
basically, he's Lex's janitor, cleaning up all his messes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but it's like, you know,
in a poster with him with a mop.
like I don't think, like I don't think Lex is gonna be like killed in this movie, right? Like it's not like one of those early aughts movies where like the villain always
Where
dies
Jack
and
Nicholson falls off the tower.
right. So that's one thing I'm really excited for too, is hopefully we get to continue seeing that. And I like in this comic that he, people call Superman the big dumb alien, but he's very smart in this when
Mm-hmm.
he uses the gravity gun that I mentioned earlier and hits Lex with it after Lex took the formula, because, gravity ages you. So it speeds up the 24-hour clock that Lex had the serum. And Lex is actually one of the smartest people in the universe. Takes him a little bit to kind of catch up to Clark and Superman in that instance to figure out what happened. Um, so I really like that. Also, like I said, with the confusion of, does everybody think Clark and Superman looks alike? That's still kind of like, I'm like, I don't understand that. But, he's posing as Clark, and Lex is like, what are you trying to hide from me? He's like, this gravity gun, and, hits him with the gravity gun. Lex is making this big speech where, then Superman kind of cuts him off and says, it means that his time has just run up. And uh, Lex, of course, says he has more serum, but, Superman puts a stop to him. And also isn't affected by the red sun at this point, right? Because he had like the red sun suit, and then like
Mm-hmm.
Solaris is there, and we use the Sun Eater that comes back around from like the first issue, um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which I liked, and then um,
You
yeah,
know what?
it kind of
You
wraps
know,
up with Superman trying to fix the sun.
you know what? There's two things that the whole conversation reminds me of. There's a Superman the animated series episode where Parasite is takes Clark's powers, and um, he has him like almost as his daily meal locked up, and he's got the confinement suit and everything, and then there's this also, and that's like in the first season, like episode 7 or 8. And then there's also this episode of Supergirl, which I think is directly inspired by that scene in All Star Superman, in which Clark has to pretend to not be Superman, but be Superman to save the day for Lex. Whereas to get through this like lockdown building, Kara has to like use her heat breath or frost breath or heat eyes and her lasers and her frost breath and all this stuff to get Lena out of trouble. Um, I think I think a lot stems from All Star Superman. I really do.
Yeah, and then he, like I said, Solaris double crosses them, and you get the sun is kind of what, turning, dying or whatever, right? And then he needs to go up there. He's like turning into pure energy, so he thinks he's the only one that's able to fix it. Lois knows that at some point he's going to be able to solve it and figure it out. And I guess just like turn that energy back in the sun and be
Hmm.
his normal self and not actually die, right? Like that seems to be what they're alluding to there, but we never really got anything after this, sequel wise or anything. But
And
um
it's almost surprising we didn't because it's such a major story and it's talked about so much. But I'm kind of glad they didn't because if we learned anything from like a Frank Miller, it is sometimes less is more. I think
mhm.
Grant Morrison, you never really have to worry about that with because Grant Morrison is always good. But sometimes when you have a story, I'll just leave it there. When you have a story that's good, less is more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think we need a sequel to this. It's just I kind of thought it was interesting that they kind of left it on like, I mean, the professor is even having something called like Project 2, you know, and he's saying about like
Mhm.
if Superman returns. So it seems like it was maybe set up for one, and then they just never wanted to. Maybe Grant Morrison never wanted to revisit it or something.
I
But
mean, this lives better as its own little thing. It
yeah, I
really
think so
does.
too.
I think it gives it more weight. I think it means more. Maybe we'll have something like we had in World's Finest, where they return to Kingdom Come, with
Oh,
like
true.
Mark Waid. But I don't. I think it would be
I
more
don't
like
know if
something like that.
Mark Waid would feel right doing that. Like I felt like he did
No,
that for
I don't.
Kingdom Come because it's his
It
story.
was his. No, but I meant like Grant Morrison might do
Oh,
a
maybe.
story later that, like in a run that, like that, like years later,
Yeah.
like
I mean,
lots of
I've
years
also
later.
haven't heard good things about Hush 2 right now either. So I mean, like it is
Well,
a
I was looking so forward to that. That the internet is crapping on it. I was like, I'm just gonna wait,
just
buy
wait
the
till it's all
trade.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait, buy the trade, and you know, just be completely above the cloud of
Yeah.
the cloud of
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully it's just people being harsh. I don't know. But
I think Hush also has like expectations that can't be beat. I mean, Hush is one of the best Batman stories there is.
I haven't read Hush yet either, so I should probably do that, huh?
You know what? When Brave and the Bold comes out, or the Batman Part Two comes out, whatever comes first.
Yeah, whatever
Uh,
comes first. We can do that in
uh,
the build up to
yeah, exactly.
man, there's no day of the week that starts with B, huh? So
Well, I'll tell you what, Matt Reeves certainly can't find it.
yeah, so I don't know what I'm gonna do for leading up to Batman, I guess. But Batman Tuesdays, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Dark Fridays.
Dark Fridays, yeah. Okay, so that was the whole story uh of All-Star Superman. I talked about the film a little bit. Like I said, they cut out some of those issues that were like they cut out all of the Bizarro stuff, they cut out the time travel one and kind of streamlined it all to fit I think pretty well in 75 minutes, honestly.
Yeah,
Um
I remember
I,
it being fun and feeling a little light too. Like it wasn't
yeah,
like super
I
tense.
remember kind of reading people saying that they didn't think it was a good adaptation, and then I watched it and I gave it 4 stars out of 5. Like I was
But
like, that seems pretty
but
straight.
Jordan, the same people will say Batman Year One is boring because it's an exact adaptation that
Right,
doesn't
right,
change
right.
a thing.
That's true.
So, I mean, you know, you're talking about people criticizing an animated film on the internet. So,
Yeah, no, I gave it like 4 stars. I really
I think 4 stars
enjoyed it.
is good. I think I'd probably give it a 3.5 if off memory. Um, it's definitely worth a watch. It's definitely fun. Um, and again, it's light, it's airy, it's not dense like the comic. I think the comic weighs itself down a little bit, and I think that's why they cut some stuff out.
Yeah, yeah,
This comic is not afraid to go into like all sorts of super stuff.
yeah. I mean, I'm seeing mostly like 7 out of 10 or whatever.
Yeah,
That's not too bad.
not
Um,
bad at all. Nowadays,
the
7 out of 10 is a mid.
Did you know it made $4.7 million on DVD sales
Okay, that's incredible. The
and
fact that we have it,
2.5 almost
uh,
2.5, 2.4 on Blu-ray sales.
and then that's not even factoring like rentals on like Amazon.
Right. $7
So
million just from DVDs and Blu-rays. That's pretty good. And the director
yeah,
of this, by the way, was Sam Liu, who also, you may recall, dear listeners, uh, on what he has directed. He was just directing Creature Commandos. He directed some of the episodes of Creature Commandos. I think he may have been. Let me see if I can find out. I'm not sure if he was the showrunner of that one. No, Dean Lorey was the showrunner, but he directed like Episode 2, Episode 4, Chasing Squirrels.
Oh, Chasing Squirrels is such a good one.
And he did Episode 6 with Dr. Phosphorus. I mean, he
I
directed some of the
still
best
haven't
episodes of the
recovered
show.
from Chasing Squirrels.
No, me
I don't
neither.
think I'll ever recover. Like, like I'll be on a therapist so far like 20 years, and it'd be like, "What's wrong?"
Chasing
You sound like
Squirrels.
you're chasing squirrels.
But no, I overall enjoyed the comic. After kind of giving it some breathing room. Once I kind of got through the Bizarro stuff, I enjoyed it more too.
Yeah,
Um, the film I liked. So it makes me feel a little bit better. When I was first reading this and wasn't jiving with it, I was like, this is like the big inspiration for Superman. Hopefully, I'm gonna like that. But obviously, it's not a step by step
I
thing
think a
anyway.
lot of the
So
Lex
yeah,
stuff is where we're getting here.
and
I
just probably like some of like the robots are
mhm.
very All Star
Very all star.
Superman.
Yep.
Um,
Thank you,
and probably
robot.
just like there was rumors of the movie being kind of like day in the week type thing that kind of feels similar to this, where you're like following 12 events that he's
And I'm
the
sure there'll be
12
a
great works
montage.
or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be like a montage of something like in a Superman movie. I feel like every Superman movie has some sort of montage where he's just being Superman. And you get to experience the fun of Superman before you get into the uh, dearth of the story. But with the kaiju and all these battles with the
Yeah.
ninja gear and stuff, maybe we might not have much of a montage, but you know what I mean.
All right, so this is Superman Sundays. Last week we did our tier list for the live action Superman suits. So make sure you check that out if you missed it. But this is our third Superman Sunday, which means we're actually halfway through our Superman Sundays here.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, so we got a couple more weeks, and then I actually put Superman Sundays as ending July 13th because I'm thinking I might just put our full spoiler review up on that last Sunday and
Yeah.
just have, we'll have our immediate reactions before that, but just having just keeping the theme of Superman Sundays through July 13th. So
Can you imagine how good that's gonna feel when we get there? I don't think we've ever rooted for a movie quite like we rooted for this one. It's a very unique experience. We obviously were waiting for the Batman, and the ride for that was great. I think the ride for Deadpool and Wolverine was really good, but I think this is going to be different. It just hits uh, something that I don't think we've been anticipating a movie much like this since like Infinity War. Like it's been a while since something's hit like this. So the ride to Super Sundays is just blissful, and I really hope it pays off.
same. I think one thing that gets me, I guess, so I don't know if I would be as excited for this if it wasn't James Gunn
Yeah,
because I have faith. He has the track record. I
let him
mean,
cook.
he's got the three Guardians films, the holiday special, Creature Commandos, the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker. He's done it on both sides, right? This
Mm,
one is the one where it's like probably has to be the most family friendly, and I believe he understands that as well. And I think we're in for a treat. And I don't want to jump the gun.
mm.
No pun
Up
intended.
the gun.
No pun intended. Okay. Didn't mean that. I don't want to jump the gun, but if this movie lives up to it for me, this probably becomes my favorite James Gunn movie.
Yeah, that's a high bar for me. I
Because
the
mine right now is
Guardians
probably
movies.
Guardians 1 and then
Mhm.
Suicide Squad. It's probably up there for my two
Yeah,
favorites.
I love the Suicide Squad, but the Guardians trilogy means a lot to me. I think it's just some of the most inspirational filmmaking in superhero media. Uh, if this is above Guardians, that's because with Marvel for me, it's very much you got like Infinity War is like probably the best thing you'll ever see, but like it's very much Guardians and Spider Man for me when it comes to Marvel. But like if this gets to above Guardians for me, Oh, we are going to feast on a film, like an absolute film. I cannot wait for it. And the early tracking is encouraging. I know the early tracking has been off post COVID. Um,
Yeah, I'd be a
I,
little. I
I'm a
was
little
looking
pumping
at
the
the
brakes on some of
history,
those numbers. Yeah.
and like pre-COVID, it was on target, man. It was like off like maybe 20
Mhm.
million at once.
But you
But
also don't want people to expect it to be bad and then they don't go to the theater. So it's better than
no. Look,
that.
here's the thing: the people that pay attention to tracking and all, and look, we're recording this way ahead of time, people. We're
Yeah.
recording on June 2nd, so
Right.
by the time this releases, there's probably going to be better tracking out there. But
Because there will be tickets on sale.
we're referring to the 150 to 175 million opening weekend that came out like this weekend, and the people that pay attention to that
Are already in the
are
theater.
are the hardcore box office people and like us. Joe Schmo, like my grandmother, is not like, man, this is tracking so well or this is tracking bad. They'll look more at reviews than they will box office.
Something happened to me today. That was the first time in the run up to this that has happened. So I was wearing my Superman hat leaving work, and a guy goes, "Oh, Superman today." I was like, "Oh, it's World Needs Superman." He goes, "Oh, that's cool. I like Superman." I was like, "Yeah, I can't wait till July." He goes, "What's in July?" The Superman movie's coming out. He goes, "Oh, really?" The first person in the whole time that didn't know there was a Superman movie. I think it's pretty optimistic that like that's the first time.
Let me go ahead and read this. So this is an email from Lorenzo, of course, our dear
Our boy,
listener
our boy,
Lorenzo. Um, he
Klana,
said
Klana.
he said this is just anecdotal. So I hope this doesn't reflect the state of things more broadly. But on Free Comic Book Day a couple weeks ago, I was standing outside my local comic shop and got to talking to a guy in line with me who was wearing a Superman shirt and apparently was unaware that a new live action Superman movie was coming out.
Are you kidding me?
He said he hadn't seen any promotion at all for it, so another guy, presumably as baffled by this as I was, in line with us, pulled up the teaser trailer on his phone and showed it to him. Again, I'm hoping this is just a strange anecdotal anomaly, and other data that you mentioned on the podcast seems to suggest it is, but it is a bit concerning if a person in line at a comic book shop wearing a Superman shirt isn't aware of the new movie. Now, this is back on Comic Book Day, so that's early May.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen much at that point. Like the new trailer wasn't out.
If you
So
hadn't seen the teaser trailer in December, it's not the end of the world. But does not know that one was coming out is surprising.
yeah, but again, that just kind of shows how much in the weeds we are with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I saw a guy at BJ's wearing a Superman shirt, and I'm like, I don't know, do I say anything to him because he might be like just a fan of like the
I've done that a
Christopher
couple of
Reeve
times.
movie? You know what I'm
I've
saying?
done
Like
that.
he may not be
I've done
aware
it.
of what's going on.
I've done it a couple times at Giant. And one time I was like, dude, I can't wait till July. But we ended up talking for like 25 minutes in the dairy aisle. Like it was just like I was like, yeah.
And you were off the clock for this.
Oh, I
They
was
did not.
pretending to work a little bit. Like I was loading cheese like this. Like I'm talking to them.
Yeah. No, I've
They're
been
getting
there.
yeah.
I've been in the
You
dairy.
know,
That's how I
you
used to do.
you put your cart by the door. You have the door open.
You
You
know
put
what I
your arm
actually
in.
remember? This is going to
What's
sound.
up?
I was just thinking of this the other day.
Hmm.
I was listening to this book called Slugfest. It's a really good book. It's about the rivalry of DC and Marvel throughout the comic history up to like the movies. And I think it was published in like 2018.
Yeah,
So
you were talking about this on the chat too.
yeah.
Yeah.
2018 is when it was published. So obviously post Justice League, before COVID and like some of the downturn of the Marvel stuff and like the James Gunn stuff. So like there wasn't, it kind of ended on like a note of like, will DC ever figure it out? Right.
Yeah,
But
Marvel scoreboard 200.
right,
DC
right,
a field goal.
right. So there was a section in there where they're talking about how they had rebooted with the new 52 and how fans were upset and stuff. I was working at my grocery store in the dairy aisle stocking stuff when the news about the new 52 was coming out. And I
Wow.
was thinking about it while I'm stocking, like, oh my God, like, what does this mean? And like, I remember thinking that kind of stuff.
And by the way, that's every day working at a grocery store because it's
Yeah.
mindless work. You match
And we had
NPCs to
once the
tags.
new
It's pretty easy.
52 launched, we actually had a comic spinner of comics
Really?
with the new 52 stuff
Yeah,
and like
we've never
Simpsons
sold
comics.
comics in my store. Never sold comics in my store.
It didn't last long. It did not last long, but
okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, because you bought them all.
yeah, they sold Simpsons comics,
Really?
DC
That's pretty
comics.
cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
No Marvel.
yeah.
They did not sell Marvel, but
They didn't need the extra sales.
yeah. So this was like what that new 52 is 2011. So I also remember the announcement of Miles Morales when I was at work too, and people like freaking out online about Spider-Man being killed off and being taken over by Miles.
Yeah.
I remember all that too.
I also remember that the people who hate on the New 52 are a little rich because the Court of Alice is like one of the best things ever.
And people, I was at my comic book. I was at my comic book shop and I was wearing my Superman hat, and I got the Flash Volume 3 New 52 thing,
nice.
Guerrilla Warfare, and
one of my favorites actually.
The comic book shop was like, the guy there was like, "Hey, I hear really good things about it." I think he said he heard good things or he liked the New 52 Flash, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I read them all already. I just need to own them now." Is what my thing was. So.
I remember when we did our Flash recommendations. Guerrilla Warfare was one of mine.
Yes, yours was. Yeah, Guerrilla Warfare.
I love Guerrilla Grodd. Like I feel like I like Grodd more than 90% of the fan base. Like I love.
Read Absolute Flash.
Okay, I gotta get on that.
I'm going to be putting out my review soon. It's probably already up if it's June 15th now, but it's going to be up. I got to record it, but.
Do you think I could get Ron and Evans on that? I could probably get Evans.
No.
If I could probably get Evans on that. We might be able to incorporate some of that into our absolute Batman talk.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm down to join it if you get somebody else to do it too. But yeah, it's the first 3 issues are its own story as it kind of sets up the origin for Wally. So now going on, it's going to be like its own type of thing. But very interesting use of Guerrilla Grodd in that. So I'm curious to get your thoughts.
Now, okay. I might read this tonight. Oh my goodness. Guerrilla Grodd. I love me some Guerrilla Grodd. I think the funniest use of Grodd was Legends of Tomorrow and Make America Grodd again.
Oh my god. I use that clip all the time. I love it so much.
It's just it's funny because of the horrors that come from that slogan used the way it's used. That's this one little funny use of it that's just nice. But I that episode of Legends. Also, I think the Flash TV show. I think Grodd was used so perfectly in that. And when you had the Grodd versus King Shark, anytime you had those two in the episode, it was one of the best episodes of the season. So.
Yeah, no, it's really funny too. I remember cracking up during that part because
it was just so on the nose. It was so on the nose. And it's I think he even said Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Make America Grodd again.
I just want to know who came up with that in the writer's room and was like, we nailed it.
I'm
perfect
convinced.
Because I want to thank them personally.
I am convinced that in the writer's room of Legends of Tomorrow, what happened was they came up with crazy jokes, and then they're like, why don't we just make that into the episode?
Yeah.
And they're like, why are we doing this? And they're like, well, we already did it, so it's happening.
Perfect. Anyway.
Yeah.
Superman Sundays continue every Sunday leading up to the Superman movie. And like I said, the Sunday after it releases will be our full spoiler review. Then we'll have more Superman coverage, of course, throughout then. But we're also going to be building up the Fantastic Four with Fantastic Fridays. That's not going to be every Friday, but it is going to be probably every other Friday. I'm thinking of releasing, or if we record them ahead of time like this, I might save them all for every Friday, but a month before the movie instead of as far as we're doing this. Keep an eye on that. this fall, I'm going to be releasing I lined up my first 2 guests for Enter Flash Time. So I'm going to be recording those over the summer, releasing those in the fall. Might time it for the 11th anniversary of the Flash premiere. I think that might be a good way to do it.
That's fair.
I might do that. So we'll see if that's how it works out or not. But that's over on Enter Flash Time, which is our Flash podcast of Supes and Sabers, where we'll be revisiting the 2014 CW series. And every episode Barry appears in the Arrowverse.
Yeah.
So not just every Flash episode, but every episode Barry appears into.
I happen to know somebody who will be on one of those Arrow episodes.
Yes. And I'm debating, this will probably change, but I'm like, do I do episodes that Wally is into and do the Legends bits? Or like, because he's part of Flash, right?
Okay, so my idea here is, if you ever got a Patreon for it, that would be the Patreon content.
Oh, good idea. Good idea.
But no, you could do that, but I feel like that's like an appendix.
Yeah, like do that and like Reverse Flash in Legends, and do those.
Yeah, honestly,
Patreon.
the Reverse Flash of Legends could be like a really cool special. Like,
yeah,
especially because the contrast between that actor and Tom Cavanaugh is just insane.
Yeah.
It's like, how are they the same character? How? It's not possible. And I like the both. That's what doesn't make any sense. But
so that is coming soon, but just keep an eye on that. I don't have what we're going to be doing next week for Superman Sundays, but it will be probably For All Seasons or some other fun Superman. No, I'm releasing this third, so the tier list will be second.
I got
That way I'm not sitting on a guest episode for so long, but
cool.
going to prioritize that one. But it'll be like For All Seasons, or something fun, like another tier list or something. I don't know. We'll do maybe like ranking something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But just every Sunday we'll have fun stuff leading up to Superman.
Totally trying to get my mom to read For All Seasons before the movie comes out. She's never into comics. She's like kind of resistant to the comics. And I was like, you should read For All Seasons before Superman. But I think All-Star Superman would be just too much comic for her. Like, it'd just be like too crazy. But I feel like
definitely. And too long.
All Seasons,
All Seasons is like what, four issues?
Yeah,
compared to 12?
It's 4 issues, 4 distinct narrators. It works pretty damn good.
Yeah. All right. Well, at Supes and Sabers on all of our social media. Thank you all for watching or listening along. We'll catch you next time here on Superman Sundays.